Hey guys, in this video we will be guiding you through Heroic Skyreach. Keep in mind the information and the footage in this video is from beta and is subject to change. Heroic Skyreach is a mechanic-heavy dungeon with both the trash and the bosses requiring more movement and target switching compared to some of the other dungeons. The first sets of trash consist of a few different types of Aerie. The initiates are the healers that you will want to watch out for and focus down first. They will cast Flash Heal and this can be interrupted. Spinners will toss a blade in an arc. Anyone within the path will take some minor damage. Whirling Dervishes will cast Storm. This will target a random member and put a green circle on the ground that deals a high amount of damage to anyone standing in it. The cast can be interrupted by stunning the dervish. A regular interrupter silence will not work. Solar Flares will summon Solar Familiars. The Familiar will channel and empower on the Solar Flares, which can be stunned to interrupt the channel. Otherwise, DPS will need to switch and DPS them down. They will also cast Flashbang. If this ability is not interrupted, it will disorient anyone who is not turned away. Heralds of the Sunrise will cast 2 heals. Flash Heal that needs to be interrupted, and Solar Heal cannot be interrupted. Solar Heal will place a fiery looking patch on the ground. This seems to heal any mobs standing in it, but will knock back any players that went too close. Chakradaris will not move, throwing chakrams at their target. We found that the damage from these wasn't too bad, but crowd controlling these will help your healer out and help keep tank damage down. Blade Feathers will do a charge in a line that does minor damage. You will see this ability again on the first boss. So the first boss of the instance is Ranjit. Ranjit is a fight that is mainly about positioning. He will frequently cast Wind Wall. This is a light-colored blade wall or line that deals nature damage if hit by it. These slowly rotate on a central axis. We found that Ranjit seemed to cast the most frequently in melee, but it can occasionally spawn on a ranged player. Having the tank work their way around the outside helped keep the middle area clear for his 4 Winds ability. 4 Winds is a spiral of gold blades that deals significant nature damage to anyone caught in it. The curved lines slowly rotate in its axis in the center of the room. This is easily avoidable if positioned accordingly. On Heroic, he will use an ability called Lens Flare. This is a fire laser that will fixate on a player. We found it best to kite it around the outside in a spot that won't be in the tank's path. Spinning Blade are small blades that Ranjit throws out that deal physical damage to anyone within their path. These are technically avoidable, but the damage isn't significant. Another ability he has is called Fan of Blades. This isn't avoidable. He will throw small blades that fan out, dealing physical damage and leaving a bleed on players it hits. Ranjit will occasionally do Piercing Rush, just like the charge from the Blade Feathers. This is a charge that can be avoided, but the damage is minor. So to summarize, throughout the encounter, make sure that you are not spread too far across the platform, as this will outrange your healer. Positioning and placements of the wind walls and lens flares are key to your success. The trash before the next boss, you will want to kill the familiar first, then focus down the adept. They will cast flash heals that need to be interrupted, and if they summon a sun trinket, this will heal the Aerie, so DPS will need to switch to it immediately. The next boss in Skyreach is Arcanath. This fight is very healer intensive and it is recommended that you use heroism for the fight if it's available. Arcanath will periodically use Smash on the tank. He smashes the ground, dealing a large amount of physical damage in front of him. This can be sidestepped, but only the tank should be standing in front of Arcanath. Throughout the fight, he will activate random Sun Construct prototypes that will channel beams healing Arcanath unless players step into its path. On Heroic, there will be 2 beams at a time. Those who soak the beams will take a high amount of damage. We would advise players either planning out personal cooldowns or taking turns soaking the beam to relieve the damage from the initial soaker. Arcanath will cast Burst every 30 to 45 seconds, which deals a large amount of fire damage to your entire party. Every time he uses this ability, it will increase the damage of the next use by 4%. This ability acts as a mini Enrage if DPS is not high enough, as the damage will not be survivable. So to summarize, we found it easiest to group up in a semicircle foundation around the back of the boss. This allowed us to position ourselves evenly to soak the beams while making it easier on the healer. The packs on the way to Rukran will focus on random players. We would suggest kiting these adds with slows, or you can utilize AoE stuns if they are available. While pulling the very last pack, make sure to pull them back and away so you don't accidentally aggro the boss and die like we did. The third boss you will face is Rukran. This fight is focused on ad control and positioning. The main tank mechanic to look out for is Rukran's ability, Pierce Armor. This is a 1-second cast that will give a tank a stacking debuff that increases the damage they receive by 10% for each application. This effect will not apply the debuff if the tank is using their active mitigation. As the encounter goes on, Rukran will cast this more frequently, ultimately making it more difficult to avoid with mitigation. Rukran will summon a solar flare, spawning a phoenix that fixates on a random player, including tanks. These can be slowed and stunned, but roots and knockbacks did not appear to work. If you are fixated, you will need to kite the ad without it reaching you, otherwise it will inflict additional unnecessary group-wide damage. Kite the ad to an open spot that is at least 5 yards away from another ash pile. This is necessary due to their ability Sunstrike. This ability only activates when the solar flare is killed, dealing fire damage to your group, and if they are too close to a pile of ash, their explosion will activate another solar flare. On Heroic, Rukran will channel Quills. This is a very deadly attack that will inflict a large amount of physical damage. To avoid this ability, you will need to line of sight it behind the giant pillar in the middle of the room. Not only will you take a ton of damage from this ability, but it will apply a debuff increasing the damage you take from Quills and Screech. Screech is Rukran's ability that he will only cast if the tank is not in melee range. This is especially important when Quills is ending. The tank needs to get back to the boss immediately, otherwise it will cause group-wide damage and apply the debuff increasing the damage taken from Screech and Quills. So to summarize, tanks need to make sure they are handling their debuff correctly, while the group manages the solar flares that spawn, making sure not to get additional adds. We found it best to have range all start on one side, positioning the solar flare deaths and moving to the other side after the first cast of Quills. Make sure you have efficient uptime on the boss, otherwise the damage on the tank and the group will become too much to handle. You can utilize Heroism or Drums if they weren't used for the previous boss, but it isn't needed for this boss if done correctly. For the trash before the final boss, you will encounter a wind bridge with birds that will lunge at you, dealing minor damage. These are avoidable, and if you are hit too many times, they will kill you. Any movement speed increases will help you get through this quickly and efficiently. Be cautious at the end of it because there is a trash pack waiting for you. We would recommend to crowd control the Adept to prevent any healing while your group focuses down the Solar Magnifier. These will empower their allies, but can be stunned to disrupt their channel. We found it easier to kill the left trash pack after running into difficulties with the right pack of constructs. The left has mobs you have encountered before and have the same priorities. The final pack before the last boss all share a health pool. There will be some AoE damage to your group, but overall it is a very easy pack. High Sage Virix is the final boss of the instance and is actually pretty easy. There are only 3 abilities of note for this encounter. The first ability to be aware of is Cast Down, which calls down a Solar Zealot to carry the targeted player off the edge of the platform. The targeted player is hit with a fire orb looking ability, and the zealot will spawn above their head. We positioned our range in an arc around the entrance to the platform and had the targeted player move to the doorway to give ourselves more time to kill the zealot, and slows are recommended here. There's a delay between the target indicating fire orb and the actual pickup mechanic that means melee players will have time to run away from the edge. It's important to know that the person being carried is still capable of using abilities, so you can attack and heal. The second ability you'll have to deal with is Lens Flare. This is the same fire beam that you saw in the first boss. This should be kited away from the doorway and towards the outer edge, avoiding the tank and melee. While being carried by a zealot, you will not take damage from the fire on the ground until you land, so be prepared to move immediately if you're dropped in the fire. The last mechanic that you need to worry about is the shield construct. This ad should be focused and killed as soon as it spawns. It will put a shield on one of its allies, reducing the damage they take by 99%. While we never had to deal with the construct shielding the zealot, it is important to know that it is technically possible and could create problems whenever both of these ads are active. The channeled shield can be interrupted and the construct itself can be stunned. So to summarize, make sure you are positioned near the door, but not right in front of it. Make sure that you are spread out so only one person has to move from Lens Flare. Kill zealots immediately unless a construct is channeling its shield on it, otherwise DPS the boss down during your downtime. We hope you have enjoyed this video and found the information helpful to you and your group. If you are interested in more heroic dungeon guides or want to know more about our team, check the links provided in the description below.